Hey dadders, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to tell you what I think are the 5 worst episodes of American Dad. Before I start, I do want to say that this is strictly my personal opinion. If any of you love these episodes, then honestly, I'm really happy for you. I wish I had more episodes of American Dad that I loved or enjoyed, but sadly I don't. I'd love to hear what you guys think of my opinions as we go on, so please let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my inclusions, and also let me know what your 5 worst episodes would be. I also just quickly wanted to mention that I've started a Patreon. It's only about £2 a month, and I'll be putting the money from the Patreon back into the channel so I can get better recording equipment and hopefully make my videos even better. You can find it at patreon.com/BobToonsReviews. There's a video up right now all about Tearjerker and the behind the scenes documentary included on the season 4 DVD, so go check it out. This list is ranked from 5 to 1, with number 1 being the worst episode in my opinion. I'm also going to start each segment with a brief plot outline for those of you who maybe haven't seen these episodes. And with all that said and done, let's get into the worst episodes of American Dad. I'm going to start off with some quick honourable mentions here. First up, my morning straitjacket. This is harsh, and I can admit that this is harsh, and that is the main reason it didn't make it into the final 5. My sole reason for not liking this episode is that I don't like my morning jacket. I don't like that genre of music, and I don't really care for Jim James's voice. Now, if Stan were to get obsessed with Frank Turner, this would be my favourite episode of all time. Mused and abused. I dislike this episode due to how mean it is. I'm not the biggest Klaus fan, I think he's a real dickhead, but all he's trying to do is make Roger a better artist, which he does. I did think for a moment that he had found real happiness with his new family and stepson, but then he turns on them and is a dickhead to them. Being mean is funny, I'm not going to lie to you about that. There are some episodes of American Dad where they are horrendous to each other, and they're some of my favourite episodes, The Great Space Roaster being one of them. But this kind of cruelty is just sad. Mural of the story. This one just missed out on the final 5 because the B plot in this episode is top tier. Roger and Steve doing a Whiplash parody about clown school. Absolutely genius. The A plot is truly terrible though. I've never disliked Stan more than when he allows the whole town to bottle his daughter and make her life hell over his mistake. And then he goes and takes it a step way too far and I can't stress this enough, chisels into her face. That being said, the B plot is absolutely amazing and brings the overall quality of the episode up to a place where I think it's unfair to have it in the 5 worst episodes. Okay, and with those out of the way, we can get into the list for real. Number 5, comb over a hairpiece. In this episode, Stan gets a hair transplant after Steve makes fun of his baldness. Stan allows Roger's persona, Rod Stewart's famous barber Jose Bose, to cut and style his new hair. But when Stan insults Roger's haircut, Jose Bose is ruined and goes out of business. Stan feels guilty and, with some advice from Klaus, starts to lie to Roger that his ideas are brilliant even when they're not and are actively dangerous. This, somehow, leads to the pair kidnapping Rod Stewart and attempting to give him a new haircut. Stan starts off this episode by being really unlikable. People who say they are being brutally honest just enjoy being brutal, in my opinion, and like Stan shows, are often really insecure and self-conscious deep down. On the flip side though, it makes no sense why Stan would feel so guilty once Roger starts to cry. Stan has made every member of his family cry. I think he probably makes Steve cry every couple of episodes and he never feels bad about that, so why would he suddenly feel upset when Roger's crying about it? There are some pretty funny jokes in this though. Hayley's Steve impression and her yelling bold over and over really did get a chuckle out of me, and the scene of Stan flatlining again during his hair seed transplant is actually hilarious. But once the main storyline kicks in and, God, Jose Bose is introduced, this thing falls off a cliff. I hate the voice of Jose Bose. I hate how much he is guilt-tripping Stan despite making really stupid and dangerous choices, and I hate it when Rod Stewart shows up. It just goes off the rails from there. It has a really weird pacing to it. It feels like so much happens in this episode, but in the first 2 acts there isn't that much, but then all of a sudden everything happens. Ending on a positive note though, the subplot about Haley, Steve and Francine being night crawlers is great. If this took up more space in the episode than it did, no, who am I kidding, I'd still put it at 5, but it is still the only redeeming quality of this episode. Them flying over the slip road and crashing is the only funny part of the final act. Number 4, Clodger. In this episode, Roger and Klaus begin a sexual relationship when they match on a dating site, not knowing who the other one is. When they're discovered though, Klaus gets bored, leading to Roger spiralling, getting himself adopted by Klaus, and landing them both in jail. So I had to shut my blinds to watch this episode as I didn't want anyone driving or walking past to see my TV through the window. I don't want my neighbours to assume I enjoy watching this or that's what I'm into. I find this episode to be deeply uncomfortable. It doesn't start out too bad, but then all of a sudden, boom, Roger and Klaus are in a soaking wet bed and panting, and it is confirmed that the wetness in the bed is sweat and not water from Klaus's bowl. This is actual softcore. The noises they're both making and how long the montage of them having sex lasts for is horrendous. I also hate how quickly Klaus turns on Roger when their relationship is discovered. I feel so sorry for him, but equally I hate how pathetic and perverted Roger is when he's chasing Klaus. Like, girl, get up, you're Roger Smith. The B-plot is also not great. It's only funny when Steve starts yelling about Jesus, but then both of Haley's eyes being stuck shut with pink eye and Steve crapping his pants is just gross. Strangely though, it isn't completely unwatchable. The pacing of the episode is pretty good. Francine, as usual, has some brilliant lines, and the episode did make me laugh a couple of times, like when Klaus is singing about being a lone wolf and manages to hang in the air when his bowl drops, and when the text bubbles are crowding around Francine and trying to eat her flesh, but most of them are in the first act. Number 3, One Woman Swole. This episode is all about Francine being a supposed quitter. The family mock her for everything she has tried but then quit on, so when she starts the gym, she is determined to not quit and pushes herself to the limit. When Stan and Roger become concerned for Francine, they too start bodybuilding, leading to them all competing at a bodybuilding tournament. Determined not to lose, Francine pushes her body to its absolute limit and ends up in a coma. So I will give this episode its due. It's the funniest episode so far. This might actually be my favourite Klaus subplot. He is at his best when he is intense, angry and irrational, and it's even better when he's correct about what he's so angry about. Stan is also really funny this episode. His good point gay jacket is amazing, and frankly I want one. I hate how intense Francine is though. It has been done before and worked, like in Tears of a Clooney or Stan Time, but I think that those worked because Tears of a Clooney is so over the top that there's an absurdist humour to it, and also her and Stan are in that together. And in Stan Time, it's the reverse. It's really grounded and admirable how Francine uses that extra time to better herself in comparison to Stan, and it's only something she's doing in the evenings. In this episode though, it's all encompassing for her and frankly a bit scary. She loses some of that ditzy, ignorant charm that she has, and she also pushes her body past its physical limit, and body horror is something that really gets me. So when she flexes at the end of the contest and gives herself an aneurysm, it literally makes me feel sick. That part really does overshadow the rest of the episode. It's not just the aneurysm itself though, it's how much tension there is before the pop, the new veins growing up her body towards her brain. I'm on edge just waiting for the pop, and it literally puts me into fight or flight. I had to force myself to keep my eyes open to watch it, and it genuinely put me off my lunch. I'd much rather watch a Klaus and Roger sex montage 10 times than watch Francine's eyes pop. This episode does end on an interesting note though. I really respect the decision to create the one-woman show in Francine's comatose mind. I just wish they didn't have to give her an aneurysm in order to do it. Number 2. Shark? In this episode, Stan and Roger stage a shark attack to help Steve overcome his fears. In typical Roger style though, he takes it too far and bites Steve's arm off. Steve then becomes a daredevil, having absolutely no fear at all and desperately searching for his next thrill. Stan and Roger eventually come clean and Steve is devastated and vows to kill a shark in order to prove that he isn't weak. Now, I have to level with you guys. I've only watched this episode twice because of how much it gave me the creeps. If this was a list of my favourite horror films, this episode actually might be up there. The feeling I get when I watch this episode are dread, fear, and a deep uncomfortability. I actually had a nightmare after the first time I watched this. I'm not even kidding. It was the close-up of Steve's face as he's being beaten up by Barry in that underground fight club. His laugh as Barry's just pounding him and he's giggling away like it's the best thing in the world. That haunts me. Like I mentioned in One Woman Swole, body horror is something that really gets to me. Not necessarily gore. I can handle some gore like the Saw films or the slasher movies, but the psychotic thrill Steve is getting out of being mutilated crosses the line for me. I had to wait for my partner to get home from work to watch this with her, and I promise you I'm not joking. You might think I'm being a wimp, and maybe I am, but my emotions are my emotions. Steve is a good boy. He's sweet and sincere, he's dorky and cringy. Yeah, he is a bit of a creep, but he's also a 14-year-old boy. Seeing him become this hedonistic, unhinged and perverted person is genuinely terrifying. There's something really sinister about him that just doesn't mesh with the Steve that we know and love. The Klaus subplot is also unsettling. His phone call to Danuta gives me the creeps, and if I ever received a phone call like that in real life, I would move house, change my phone, get a restraining order. I might go through the whole mural of the story face change process. That being said, this episode wasn't as scary to me when I watched it a third time for this episode, and as per usual, Francine is being hilarious. Initially, I had this at the top of my list, but after rewatching them all, this rightly got bumped down into second. Before we get to my number 1, I just wanted to take a brief interlude and look at the 5 worst rated American Dad episodes on IMDb. In 5th place, we have Stretched Thin. Jeff joins and MLM selling stretchy leggings, a not so subtle parody of LuLaRoe, but also on MLM cults in general. And yes, I am serious when I say cults. Some of these MLMs are so culty. It's insane. Check out the podcast, Was I in a Cult, for the stories. Honestly, I don't think this episode is that bad. Yes, it's a little bit boring, but it's nowhere near as bad as some of the others on this list in that regard. I think Stan's character has really been flanderized in these later seasons. He's turned into such an idiot. He was always ignorant and misinformed, but he was never a full-on idiot like he is in these later seasons, and especially in this episode. He was always the one questioning Francine's reckless or stupid ideas, but here he joins the MLM no question. I also think this episode does a good job in highlighting the fact that the vast majority of people who join MLMs end up not only losing money but in debt too. Overall, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. It's not awful, but it's also not great. In 4th place, Comb Over, a hairpiece. Well, I've covered this already, so let's take a look at what the reviews are saying. Roger77 agrees with me that Jose Bose is annoying. They write, Roger's personas, like the show in general, can be very funny, but then again, sometimes they're just annoying and tedious. In this case, Roger's 1970s hairdresser character is most definitely the latter. There simply isn't anything funny about him, and what's with focusing a whole episode around satirising Rod Stewart? Much of the audience probably doesn't even know who he is, and even if you do, he hasn't been part of the cultural zeitgeist for at least 30 years. I couldn't have said it better myself. And in third place is An Adult Woman. I'm just going to be honest with you, I haven't watched the latest season yet as it hasn't finished airing in the UK and I was waiting until it ended to watch it. I was also thinking of doing a watch along on my Patreon, so let me know if that's something you'd want to see. Anyway, as I haven't watched it, I can't give my opinion, but let's see what the reviews are saying. Bob Cobb 301 writes, "The idea of an episode obsessing over Dirty Dancing and going in deep with the film, not just taking shots at the actress's nose like Family Guy did, is kind of clever and just goofy enough to work in the American Dad universe. But the episode was really all over the place, as was everything that Roger was doing with his multiple personalities. This show is such an easy watch and will go down as an all-time classic cartoon, but it's also a little bit disappointing with how its final few seasons, I'm assuming, are going. Oh well, they can't all be winners, but this one was at least kind of funny." Now, I love Dirty Dancing, so I'm actually quite excited to watch this episode, and it seems from the description on IMDb that this is a Roger and Hayley episode, something that we actually don't get very much of. If you have seen this episode though, let me know what you think and if it is worth my time. In second comes Klaus and Rogu in Thank God for Loose Rocks, an American Dad adventure. Similarly to Stretched Thin, I don't really mind this episode. As I've mentioned previously, I think Klaus is at his best when he's being unhinged and paranoid, so for the episode to take the two most unhinged characters and put them against each other makes for a great idea in theory. The execution is where this episode misses out. I don't think it's as bad as some of the reviews are saying though, and if you read them all, I think maybe people are having a bit of a referendum on Rogu as a character rather than this episode itself. I largely agree though, I'm not a huge fan of Rogu. He was funny for a little bit, but now he's an established character, it's like, okay, what do we do with him? And the answer is, we don't really know. This was an attempt to find out and it was okay, but personally I'm hoping they ditch Rogu during the return to Fox. And finally, the worst episode of American Dad according to IMDb reviews is American Fung. This is where I might actually lose a few people. I like this episode. I find the interludes with Fung Hua so absurd that it actually does become funny. I see it as a satire on the growing corporatization of art and media, and in classic American Dad style, they make it absolutely ridiculous to drive the point home. This is something close to my heart, as in the UK a lot of American, Middle Eastern and Chinese businesses are buying up British football clubs and attempting to create American style sports leagues with no relegation or promotion. They're also doing things like raising ticket prices or reducing the amount of season tickets so that local working class fans are either priced out or just cannot simply get to the game because there isn't enough tickets. And these tickets are going to brand sponsorships, they're going to multi-million dollar corporations to sell as competition prizes essentially. I won't go into it, but I do think that our sport is losing a lot of its working class culture and heritage, so even though I do think this is very heavy-handed, I think it says something about art, sport and culture, whatever it is, being allowed to exist without needing to be profitable or with the intervention of corporate interests who don't get what it's all about. In summation, I like this episode. Anyway, that's enough of other people's opinions. Let's get back to mine and let you know the worst episode of American Dad. Number 1, Blagsnast, a love story. This episode centres on Roger and his relationship with a new alien that has crash landed on Earth. Roger is drawn to her pheromones, but after they sleep together, he soon gets bored and wants to move on. The new alien isn't having it though and is being far too clingy, leading Roger trying to kill her and turn her into the CIA before having a change of heart and helping her to escape. There's also a pretty good golden turd segment in there too. Sometimes when I don't know what episodes to watch, I'll ask my partner to pick 2 numbers and see what season and episode that corresponds to. The other day, she ended up picking this episode, and I was so disappointed that I nearly ended our relationship. Obviously, that's a joke, I know you're watching, but I really didn't want to put this episode on. In the spirit of fairness though, I did, and then about 5 minutes in, I had to turn it off. I hate almost everything about this episode, to the point where I actually took a long break when writing this out because I didn't want to watch it again. And do you see how much intro I'm doing for this? Because I'm doing all I can not to actually talk about this episode. But I must, so here we go. This episode's biggest crime is that it's boring. It's not funny. The voice acting from Kim Kardashian is terrible. The design of her alien is terrible. The joke name that isn't in English is terrible. How clingy and annoying Roger isn't funny or endearing, it's just annoying. It really feels like the rest of the cast are off somehow. My guess is that they're trying to overcompensate for how poor Kim Kardashian's vocal performance is. I'm not saying this as a Kim hater, by the way. I think she gets a lot of stick that is undeserved and just boils down to misogyny, but I also think that her vocal performance in this episode and her performance as an actress in general is a crime against the arts. She only ends up getting these roles because of who she is, not because of her talent. You can tell that there's some self-consciousness to her performance, like she isn't fully playing a role, she's just saying the words written in front of her. And I think because of that, the rest of the cast sounds off, like the natural rapport between the characters is missing. There's also a section where Bullock goes on a rant about how the CIA should be run more like P. Diddy runs his life. And yeah, that's aged very, very poorly. To be honest though, I'm sure Bullock and P. Diddy have more in common than I'd like to think about right now. Similarly to the Clodger episode though, I hate how quickly Roger dropped her after they have sex. I don't think using people for sex is funny, call me woke I guess, but it just makes me sad. That being said, I like when Roger tries to kill her. Anything to get her out of the show. I think the writers knew how terrible this episode was and handed us a really meaty golden turd segment, which is the only saving grace. I feel like this segment gives us a really clear picture of how the golden turd corrupts people towards evil. It clearly isn't just that this turd is worth a lot of money, because he needs money for his campaign and he could melt the golden turd down and use that. Instead, the attorney turns to the person who offered him a lot of money, who he thinks is a horrible person. That means that there's something about the golden turd that is turning him towards evil. To be honest though, I'd rather not have this segment and get rid of the whole episode. That's how much I hate it. For this to be, at the time, the final episode aired on Fox is frankly ridiculous. To go out like this when they had no idea how well they do on TBS would have been a real shame. Thank God that they're returning and they have another shot at their last Fox episode. And there we have it, the 5 worst episodes of American Dad. I hope you've enjoyed this video and agreed with me in some parts, but I also hope you've disagreed with me because I love a good debate. I really do want to hear your guys' opinions on things, so let's get chatting in the comments section. As always, thank you for watching. It really means a lot that so many people are appreciating my hard work. Please like this video, it really helps to boost my videos, and please consider subscribing if you already haven't. Catch you soon!